So today we are lucky enough to have our NCIMS annual conference attendees to be able to hear from Dr. John Wilson at Great Smokies Medical Center, and the owner of that establishment for 29 years now, and actually really a pioneer in functional medicine, not only in North Carolina, but South Carolina as well. So Dr. Wilson, if you don't mind sharing with us, what basically are the 5 W's that you think, what, where, when, why, and how, that are paramount for our attendees to hear about NCIMS?
Well, the story really goes back to, I'd say 1980, when there was a practitioner in Asheville named Dr. George Guess, who was a homeopathic physician, who was practicing homeopathy and not doing conventional medicine. And he got a complaint from the medical board. There were no patient complaints, no patient harm was affected. And they wanted to take his license because he wasn't practicing conventional medicine. Well, he challenged them in the state district court, and the district court upheld Dr. Guess's right to practice homeopathy. The medical board challenged it further in the state appellate court, and the appellate court upheld the lower court's decision. But the medical board challenged it to the state Supreme Court, and then finally in 1991, the state Supreme Court, in a 2-to-1 decision, upheld the medical board's right to establish the standards of practice of medicine. And the majority opinion said whether or not homeopathy is effective is an interesting but irrelevant question. Interestingly, the dissenting justice said it's a good thing penicillin wasn't discovered in North Carolina. But that set the stage for the pretty much to go after anybody that is doing things differently. Around 1980, when Dr. John Laird, who started this practice, started doing chelation therapy, there was complaints from the medical board about him doing this therapy, which was considered unethical. And they asked him to quit, and he said, "I'm not going to quit because it's helping people." Well, that began a parallel struggle, but which went on for years and years. And then finally in 1991, when the decision came down from the state Supreme Court, it pretty well sealed the possibility of any kind of legal option. So it became obvious that we had to do a legislative solution if we're going to solve this. So there's a small group of us that got together from people across the state, and we strategized that we're going to try to mount an effort to change the Medical Practice Act, and we were successful in doing that. And it was this has been the days before the internet, and we used phone triages and we used faxes, lots of faxes, and we convinced the medical board to change we convinced the legislator to change the wording in the Medical Practice Act. It's a long story and a very interesting one. But what came out of it was a paragraph change in the Medical Practice Act that said the medical board may not deny or restrict the licensure of a physician merely because the type of practice he or she engages in differs from the usual acceptable standards of practice, unless by competent evidence the board can prove that such a therapy is inherently more dangerous than the conventional therapy it replaces or is generally ineffective. Well, that set the stage at that point for opening up of the politics of medicine to be able to do alternative medicine in the state. Well, we were pretty exhausted at the end of that battle, but we prevailed in any case. But that wasn't the end of it. We had to do it again in 2003. And we succeeded again in changing the Medical Practice Act and introducing a bill, getting it passed, called Due Process for Physicians. And in both that bill and the previous one in 1993, which finally passed, we got the State Medical Society on board, and they supported the bill and claimed it was their idea. And we had to do it again in 2008. And by this time, the State Medical Board heard from the legislature here, Senator Sam Nesbitt, not Sam, what's his name? Mark Nesbitt, I think. Anyway, I can't remember which Nesbitt it was, but he was the most powerful person in the legislature at the time, and he managed to get through a bill that was hugely supportive of integrative medicine. And since that time, we've been much more successful when there's any challenges against integrative doctors. And there's not been any that I'm aware of that have been persecuted for doing what they're doing. So we've made some strides. In 2004, there were about half dozen of us or so who met in Statesville and decided we're going to try to be more smart politically and watch what's coming down the pike rather than reacting to what's happening and knowing what's going on. So we formed a group called the North Carolina Integrative Medical Society, or NCIMS. We formed for the purpose of being politically astute and watching what's going on with the understanding that Thomas Jefferson told us, as in his writings, that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and we thought we should try to be vigilant. And we were watching and paying attention to the legislature, and we started thinking we should form we can do some education, and we can have a experience where we have improved camaraderie among practitioners in North Carolina, not just physicians, but other professionals in the health field. And we eventually had annual meetings, and they evolved into grand rounds. And we meet three times a year in grand rounds and share cases and experience interchange among professionals. And it's been really a very rewarding experience to see the group grow. I think last year there were approximately 200 plus, almost 250 attendees at the annual meeting. This year it'll be more interesting in some ways because it's going to be virtual. I guess everything is going virtual with the COVID and the effect that it's having. But in any case, that's kind of the long and short of the history of the NCIMS. We have gotten away from being more political, but we're still paying attention to what's happening and in the climate, and hopefully we made significant changes and have changed the Medical Practice Act enough and changed the culture so that the medical board is actually asking our president, our executive director, what they think about certain things that the board's considering, certain actions the board's considering. So that's been a real step forward. I think the climate has been improved overall in North Carolina.
So what do you think are some key takeaways if someone is attending a grand rounds, a conference, a virtual conference, and they also want to become a member? So throughout your years, what do you think the benefits are to becoming an NCIMS member?
Well, I think it's really a benefit to know who else is doing what you're doing in the state. North Carolina's a big state from east to west. It's really quite a long spread, and it's a chance to get to know other colleagues. And we had an annual meeting last year that had just some great speakers and a great camaraderie among those who were there, and a chance to visit. And I think it's just hugely beneficial. I've been to many meetings, national meetings, and been in many national organizations. And I think the benefits of the relationships that are developed with the attendees is equally as beneficial, if not more, in the long run, than the pearls that you get at the clinical pearls, which are clearly valuable. Every meeting I go to, I try to find some some pearls that I can apply to my practice that are useful, that'll improve the outcomes of the patients that I'm treating.
Fabulous. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and you have a good rest of your day. And thank you
Well,
for
thank you.
all
Yeah,
that
very.
you've done to create NCIMS, all that you've donated, and just for being there a pioneer, really, in functional medicine, not only just in North Carolina, but in both of the Carolinas.
Well, thank you
great.
too, Michael. You've been a great supporter of the academy, and has been a regular participant and exhibitor and sponsoring of some great speakers. And people like you and organizations like yours have played an integral role in the moving forward with the academy. And then on behalf of the board, I can certainly express my thanks to you and others who've been equally supportive.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Okay.